The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello and good morning. Welcome to Navient CCG's webinar on advanced Unity forms. Electronic forms have been a staple in virtually all OnBase solutions to easily collect critical data from end users. These were historically custom-coded HTML forms, but Hyland realized it would be valuable to have an electronic form that would be created through simple point-and-click configuration, and the Unity form was created. The Unity form is over 6 years old now, so it isn't exactly new, but Hyland didn't stop adding functionality to the Unity form tool, making it even easier and more robust than those early versions. Most of you are familiar with Unity forms, but may not have looked at the functionality available to you since those early versions. Today, we are going to demonstrate some of the amazing power in the latest release of the OnBase version 18 to compel you to replace those custom HTML forms.
Again, welcome, and thank you for attending today's webinar from Navient's Customer Care Group. Here's a quick snapshot of the team's composition, and presenting today is Nick Albanese and myself, James Ondak. We're the two newest members of the team. Just a couple admin notes before we get started here. Please feel free to send us any comments or questions during the presentation, and please complete the survey at the conclusion of today's webinar. Today we're going to start from the basics and move into some of the more advanced features. And to demonstrate these complex options, we're going to begin with a simple Unity form and add in some of the more advanced selections.
Now, while this session is more for those of you who have already created and used Unity forms, we will want to start on the same page. Before we jump into the more advanced, let's get back to the basics. To navigate to the form designer, we will open the application menu. We will go to the administration section and then find the forms designer option. Once we have the designer up, let's do a quick walkthrough. First is the designer ribbon. The designer ribbon contains options for the following actions: managing templates, such as creating a new form or template, opening an existing template, and designing themes. Our template options, such as publishing, test driving a template before publishing, and adding additional functionality to our form. Sharing options, and managing translations of our form. More on these last two to come later. Next, the toolbox. The toolbox window contains all of the form controls that can be placed on a form. All controls can be added to the form by clicking on the control in the toolbox and then clicking within the design area. Below that is the properties window. The properties window contains the properties and forms tabs. The properties tab contains all properties that can define a visual display of a control. Each control will have different property options. Here, you can customize fields for validation and masking. Additionally, requirements for the field and autofill keyword sets can be configured from this tab. The Form Properties tab contains the properties of the form, such as template and form name. You can also apply a different theme design from this tab. And then we have the design. This is where we design our form. The design area displays the selected page and how it will show to the end user. If there are additional pages to your form, they will appear in a tabular display at the top of this window. Now that we're oriented on our workspace, let's go over some fundamentals that make all forms a bit easier for our users to work with, like autofill keyword sets. When in use, all keyword types belonging to an autofill keyword set are automatically filled with values when the primary value is entered and the tab key is pressed. Any autofill keyword set that is configured in OnBase can be used. This includes autofill keyword sets that are linked to external data sources. All of this can be set up in the OnBase configuration. Configuring autofills is pretty simple. All that is needed is to select an autofill keyword type set for a primary keyword from a select list. On the autofill keyword set screen, select the appropriate autofill keyword set from the Select Autofill Keyword Set drop-down select list. With the Create Autofill Record on Create option selected, if a new form of this form is created and the primary value entered does not exist in the associated autofill keyword set, a new autofill keyword set record will be created for the primary value. After that, we click Finish, and it's as simple as that. Now let's talk about data sets. Some fields in a form are configured for users to choose from a predefined list or data set. You can use the drop-down select list next to these fields to select a value. To configure your own data set, choose the select list type from the drop-down of the Properties window for your keyword. Next, we'll click the pencil icon in the Properties for the dataset option. From here, we can select a pre-existing dataset or create a new one. Either way, we will be brought to this window to add or edit new options. Once we're done, we can finish. And when we test drive the form, we can choose a preset option from a drop-down list. Repeating sections allow you to configure multiple instances of certain keywords and non-keywords on a form. They also allow you to define what fields can be repeated without requiring you to define the number of instances allowed during form design. After entering data in the first set of fields, we can select Add to repeat this section for a new set of data. As of OnBase 18, one of the new features to repeating sections is the default row count. This allows a form with a repeating section to have a preset number of rows available on the form upon opening. This can be especially useful on certain types of forms like job applications that require multiple references, previous jobs, and your education history. The default number of available repeating sections can be configured in our Properties window. Here, we can set the default row count as well as if rows can be removed or if we want it to be read-only. One important note, however, is that pre-existing forms that are already published cannot have their default row count updated. Before we jump into some of the more advanced features, how many of you have used any of these before? Very cool. Lots of custom action designing, calculated fields. Looks like we got some experts here. Well, anyway, let's get into some more advanced configuration options, starting with calculated fields. A calculated field can be created from the toolbox. The calculated field allows you to insert a field into the form and write an expression for that field to define the calculated result. The values are not stored but calculated in real time. Calculated fields are automatically configured as read-only fields. They cannot be changed to other control types and cannot be linked to keyword types. These calculated fields can be added as a standalone field or within a repeating section. A standalone calculated field may reference any other standalone field on the form. It may not reference any fields contained inside repeating sections or tables. A calculated field contained inside a repeating section or table may reference any field within that repeating section or table, or any standalone calculated field on the form. However, it may not reference any fields contained within other repeating sections or tables. For example, let's update this form with a calculated subtotal and total. I want the quantity of my items to be multiplied by the price of each item. I'm going to use a calculated field tool from my toolbox and make sure I put it in the table with my other item information. This way, I can have multiple subtotals when I add a new item via my repeating section. Let's give it a useful ID and a label, subtotal. Giving useful labels is incredibly important later when selecting your options and custom actions and calculations. Here, I'm using the prefix CF for calculated field, along with what exactly this label will become. Now, we will select this pencil button and then go to the expression builder. So here we have a lot of options from this select list, such as pre-built expressions, as well as other fields on the form that we may want to interact with. For this calculation, I'm going to select the quantity field, followed by the multiplication button on the right-hand side, and then the price each field. Make sure you validate your expression when you finish. Then we're going to test it in our test drive. Test drive feature is an incredibly useful one for when you're testing your form without publishing it. This way you can see what exactly users or user groups will experience when they are filling out the form. So let's put in some sample data. This looks good. My subtotal is populating, but I want to make sure it happens again when I add a new line item. Great. Now, I want to have a way to add all of my subtotals together. For this, I'm going to create another calculated field and call it a grand total. I want to make sure that I put it outside of the table so we don't get multiples of this with the repeating section. Again, we're going to give it a useful label and ID. And then we'll go back into the expression builder. Now, while I could just use the addition option, the amount of subtotals that will go into my grand total can change every time someone submits a new item request. Therefore, I will choose the sum of repeating sections or expressions option. This option shows in the parentheses how I need to build the expression. So I'm going to choose my repeating section table, items requested. I'm going to add a comma, and then the subtotal. Make sure to put a parentheses on the end of that, and then we'll validate. And now we'll go test drive this once more. So we'll put in our sample data again, just so we can get the subtotal populated. And that's populating over to the grand total. And now let's add another item to make sure that the two subtotals add. This looks good. Now let's talk about custom actions. These are truly what make the Unity forms as powerful as they are. Custom actions allow you to add dynamic functions to your form. The form will change depending on the data it receives. Instead of using a programming language to add this functionality, we can use the custom action function in our form designer. These are truly what make Unity forms as powerful as they are. When you're creating your custom actions, make sure you are using those same best practices when assigning labels and ID names to your form properties. You will not be very happy when trying to create a calculation, but all of your properties are called textbox 1 through, say, textbox 33, or calculated field 2 plus calculated field 8. The first action we will look at is writing a non-keyword to a document keyword. One of the fields on our form would be nice to be able to search on in retrieval after the form has been created. However, what if the field isn't a designated keyword from the doc type associated with the form? We can use custom actions to assign this value to a keyword. I'm going to create a keyword for my grand total. This way I can search in OnBase retrieval for Unity forms with a specific grand total. First, we will create a name for our custom action. We'll call this copy grand total to supply request total keyword. Next, we have conditions and actions. These are our if-then statements. If this condition is met, then this action will occur. The add button lets us choose a condition type from a drop-down. One of the popular conditions is the expression is true condition. If the expression on the form is on the form, then the condition is true. What we want is anytime the grand total is greater than 0 to copy it to a keyword. So we're going to configure the values. I'm going to choose grand total. Then I'm going to change the operator to greater than, and then the value of 0. Now, if this 0 was an alphanumeric expression instead, we would need to use double quotes, but since it's numeric, I can leave it. Now we'll set our action statement. I'm going to use set field value. Now make sure that you establish the value first. Choose the grand total, then the field, and select OK. We're going to leave this existing values will be overwritten there. This is because we want the grand total to update with any changes we make as we go. Now let's test this out. So first we need to get our grand total to be greater than 0. So it can move over to this request total keyword. So we'll add in some sample data. So we have a $50 grand total, and this did write over to our request total. And then we can submit the form, and when we go retrieve for a $50 request total in OnBase retrieval, this form would come up. Next up, we're going to talk about changing what is visible and not visible on a form via a custom action. On this form, currently employees can view the manager approval section. But what if we don't want them to be able to view and approve their own requests? Let's make a new custom action. We'll call this the hide manager approval section. And we want to use the condition user is in or not in a group. If they're in any group that's not the manager group, I want to hide the section. So I'm going to choose the manager section with manager user group. Then in my actions, I'm going to choose change element visibility. Let's find the manager approval section. And here we could toggle it to hidden or unhidden, but we want it to stay hidden. Now when we go into test drive, we're viewing this as not a manager, so the section is missing. But we can choose to view the form as a part of the manager user group. So I'm going to click this checkbox and refresh it. And then when I go back, this should be here. And it is. Looks good. So I'm pretty happy with how far along the form has come in terms of automating calculations and choosing what can and cannot be viewed, but now I want to make the form faster to fill out. Let's try autofilling some form fields based off calculations. I'm going to auto-populate certain fields that I think should have a default value. For example, the date and time of a request being submitted. Whenever the form is filled out, the request date will pull in the current date and time. We'll create our new custom action. This one I'm going to call set current date and time. We'll go to our conditions, and we have two options that we could use in this case. The field is empty/not empty, or form is new. I'm going to go with field is empty/not empty. So I'm going to choose my field, and I'm going to pick the date and time request field because that's what we're populating. And then I'm going to add an action. We'll go with set field value. Let's find the field again that we want to change, and we're going to set the value of that field to now. Make sure you put the parenthesis on the end or else it won't validate. Let's click OK, and then we'll go test drive this. And this is populating correctly. It will populate with whatever the time and date is of your personal computer. So since I know that this is populating, I'm going to change the date and time requested field to read only so people can't go in and edit that as well. Validations. These can be very important in eliminating extra overhead for our approvers or users in the next steps of the form. We don't have to manually check to make sure certain fields have been correctly filled out. For example, I want to make the requested delivery date at least 2 days from the order date. I also don't want to let users accidentally select a date in the past. Let's name this delivery date validation. And for the condition, I'm going to choose expression is true. First, the value is going to be the delivery date field. And then we're going to change this operator to the less than sign. And then for my next value, I'm going to choose a function. This will be similar to our calculations field option. I'm going to go with add days function. For this, I will pick the date plus the number of days that I want to add on to that. So I'm going to choose today for the date, and then I'm going to add 2. So the date starts at today's date plus 2 days. Validate it really quick. Next, the actions. Let's choose invalidate field so we prevent the user from entering bad data before the form is submitted. We're going to invalidate the delivery date. And then here we can create a custom message. For this one, I'm going to give something a little more verbose. I'm going to choose delivery date cannot be in the past. Please allow at least 2 days for shipping. and then we can go and test this out again. So we have the date and time of the request as the 14th of February. If I choose a date in the past, I'll get this error message. And then let's try 1 day ahead. Again, we can't do that. But if we choose 2 days, we don't get the error. So available data sets. It would be nice for employees to order whatever office supplies they need to be productive, but higher-end purchases like laptops and tablets should probably only be ordered by a manager. For this reason, I'd like to restrict orders to Newegg to my manager user group only. We can use a custom action to dynamically select from our vendor drop-down list. Let's create a custom action, and we'll call it Only Managers Can Order from Newegg. We're going to use the user is in or not in group condition. I'm going to toggle this to not in and then select the user group. When the form opens, it will check the user group of the person opening the form to decide what selections are available. Next, I will select my action, and I'm going to choose Filter Select List. If I try to select the value first to configure, OnBase won't let me. I must have the select list chosen first to display the available values within that select list. So I'll pick my list, and now I should be able to choose the correct value that I'm looking for. Select Newegg, and this should take care of that. So let's test it. So when I first go into test drive, Newegg is not an available option, but we can change our user group that we're viewing as, choose manager, and then when we go choose from the dropdown, it's there this time.
Condition buttons can be configured to perform any type of custom action. Once the user clicks the condition button, the custom action will be performed. Let's say we made an error on the form and we wanted to start over. Instead of clearing out each field manually, we can add a button to clear the form for us. Let's create a condition button now. We'll start by finding the condition button in the toolbox and dragging it over to our form. We'll want to rename that with the ID and label with something specific and clear. We'll go with clear section. That seems simple enough. We'll do the same for the label. Now that we have our button, we need to tell it what to do. So we'll go up to Custom Actions and create a new one. We'll give it a clear name, clear section, and then we'll add a new condition. Condition button clicked shows up as the default, so we'll just stick with that one. And we want to use our clear section button that we just created. If we had a bunch of them, it would show up right here, so this is why it's important that we have concise naming elements. So we'll need to add a new action for our button, and we're going to select clear field value to erase any data in those fields. Now we want to choose which fields we want to clear, so we'll want to delete anything in the top half, the employee ID, employee name, all of those. So let's select the fields we want, employee ID, and we'll do the same for employee name, add, clear field value, and we'll find employee name here. You want to repeat this process for every field you want to delete, but luckily through the magic of technology, I've already taken care of the rest. Now that they're all added, we can take this for a test drive. We'll start entering some sample data here. This is for Jane Doe. Employee ID is 123456. But, oh, you know what? I just realized I made a mistake. I didn't want to fill this out for Jane Doe. Let's go ahead and test out this clear section button and make sure it works. There we go. As we can see, all the fields have been cleared out. And actions can be performed based on multiple conditions. Sometimes you might want one or more condition to execute a specific action. The conditions can be set to and or. If and is selected, all of the conditions must be met before the action will perform. Conversely, if or is selected, only one of the conditions will be met. Let's say we want to highlight the grand total if it equals more than $100. We want our management to see that and make sure that the orders are correct. So let's make a new custom action here. We'll make sure to give it a relevant name. Highlight grand total if more than $100. And now we need to add our conditions. For the first one, we'll select expression is true and configure that. We want to change our first value to our field CF grand total. And then we need to change our operator from equals to greater than. We need to change the value to 100, and as Nick said before, if this was a string, we would need the double quotes, but since it's just a number, it's fine as it is. So let's add our other condition here. We only want to highlight this if the manager approves the form, so we'll go ahead and select expression is true. We'll find our request status field. And this time we can leave our operator as equals here. But since this is a string now, we're going to need the double quotes, and make sure that you spell everything correctly because it has to be exact. The custom action can be configured so that only one of these conditions must be met or both. In this case, we want to leave this as and make sure that these are true, but if we wanted, we could change this to or. So let's add our action. We want to highlight the grand total, so let's select highlight element. We'll select our grand total here, and then we can choose what kind of highlight we want. You can really customize this to your liking, and there are many different choices to choose from. Here we can select a preset list of colors, or we can press advanced and get more creative. You can enter the RGB, HSL, or CMYK values, or you can just use the color palette. So let's go with a nice bright yellow to catch the manager's eye. And then we can change our text to really make this pop. A nice red should do the trick here. So let's close out of here and let's take it for a test drive. We're going to need to see this from the manager's point of view. So if we select the manager and then refresh the form, and let's fill out some sample data here. Our grand total still looks good, but let's see what happens when I approve this. And there we go. As soon as both of those conditions are met, our highlight went into effect. And let's move on to the theme designer. The theme designer will let you design and customize your Unity forms. If you'd like to spice up your form a little, we can customize the colors and fonts in the theme designer. Colors can be configured for each part of the form, so you can really get in depth with your new theme. Let's take a look at our form. It's kind of boring and simple right now. Let's spice it up and add some colors. We'll select the theme designer from the ribbon, and we can select new to design your own from scratch, or we can select the drop-down to choose a pre-built theme. If we wanted to use a pre-built theme as a template, we can select the duplicate button, and then just go ahead and start giving it a name. And we have plenty of different options here, so let's get a nice background color going. What's nice is that the preview pane will update as soon as you make the changes. And similar to the highlight element from before, the advanced button will allow you to customize the colors further. You can use RGB, HSL, CMYK. So let's just pick a nice blue here. And then if you happen to know the hex code of your colors too, you can just paste that over. And this is pretty ugly. If you don't like any of the changes you've made, you can just hit the reset button and undo all your changes to start over. But let's say we were happy with this, and we can just go and hit save and close and get out of here. And now that we've made the theme, it's time to apply it. To do this, simply go over to the form properties, and then choose your theme from the dropdown. And then if you notice anything that you'd like to change, you can select the little pencil to edit the theme on the fly. And as you can see, there are definitely many different customization options here. So now that we've designed our new form, it's time to share it. Unity forms can be completed outside of OnBase, such as publishing the forms to external websites or emailing links to the form. This is ideal for users who may or may not have had an OnBase account. This is great for customers, employees, or applicants. The form will be stored in OnBase for further processing by system users. To create the Unity form URL, click Share. In order to share, you must have the Unity form web server license installed. If your web server has a valid TSL certificate, you can select Use Encrypted Connection to share the form over a TSL encrypted HTTPS connection. The server field is your host name and virtual directory associated with the web server. The data source field is where you want the Unity forms to be stored in OnBase. The authentication settings can be set up to require a user to log in to access the form, or you can set up a public form that requires no login. If the standard user form does not have an OnBase account, you will use a fixed login for a generic username. For example, if I was creating a form to share externally for job applicants, I may name this username as OB-job-applicants. The target URL provides a path after the file is completed, such as a simple thank you for your submission page or something like that. And if you'd rather embed the form in an existing web page, you can select the size here. If you leave the embed form unchecked, your form will open in its own web page. The result field shares a link that the form will appear on when it is published. You can simply click the Copy to Clipboard button to save some time, and I recommend saving this address somewhere safe as it is hard to retrieve later. It is not saved in the Unity Forms Designer. And a common question here is, how do licenses get consumed? After the form is submitted and/or saved to the OnBase repository, concurrent licenses will be held after the form is submitted until normal timeout occurs. Named licenses will be consumed and released upon submission. And here we can take a look at this in action. Our own software upgrade request at Navient.com is a perfect example of how to share your Unity forms. We'll start at Navient.com and select Contact. We'll scroll down to the customer portal page. We'll select the software upgrade request. And from here we can enter all of our information about our upgrade and send it on over to our Navient employees. We can see by the asterisks that a lot of this information is required, and some of it even requires validation. I'm going to enter some sample data here just to get this request going. And as you can see here, I accidentally put a typo in my phone number. Whoops. Don't worry, the form will definitely let us know about that. Changing certain fields will hide or show pertinent information. For example, if I select no in the estimate, the support bank of hours and environment fields disappear. By selecting yes again, they'll come back. If this is a test system, we can set up your database with production data. There that is. But if it's production, we don't need that. And if there are any new servers, we'll need to know about those for the server specifications. So I'm just going to go ahead and enter my specs in here. And when I hit submit, we are good to go. Oops, looks like I made a couple mistakes here. And another little bit of foolproofing. Let's say you accidentally hit the back button. The site will display a warning that you're about to leave and lose all your information. And security is always a factor when it comes to forms. We don't want the wrong people to create, modify, or delete our information. So to lock this down a bit, we can make sure that only certain people have access to make any changes. We'll select Form Visibility from the ribbon. And by default, the display for creation for all user groups is checked. We want to make sure only the manager can access this, so we'll go ahead and uncheck that, and then add our manager group. Hit the arrow, and select Save. Now only the manager group will be able to modify or change this form. And we saw how we could use a custom action to hide certain sections, but we can also do that with security. We'll scroll down to the Manager Approval section, and then select Is Secured. We'll select the Security Wizard, and we'll just go ahead and find the group that we want. We'll add our managers, add them. And if you wanted, you can have certain groups be only read-only, but we want our managers to modify the form, so we'll just ignore that for now. Let's hit Finish and taste for a test drive. And as we can see, the Manager Approval section is missing, but when we preview the form as the manager group, it'll show back up. There we go. And it's there.
Translating our forms. For international organizations, translations may be crucial for your business processes. You also may have end users that don't speak the primary language of your organization. While we could just use a new form for each language, that would be a lot of extra configuration. Instead, we can use the translation feature in Unity Forms Designer from one Unity form to perform translations. We will export a text file that contains our Unity Forms text labels, translate those labels, and import it back to OnBase. Select the form you are translating, and then choose the original language. For example, we'll choose English. Next, we will go to the exports, choose the language that you are exporting to, save, and continue. From here, we would choose where the file will go. Usually, just the desktop is easiest if you're just going to configure it immediately. Then choose a delimiter and separator to be able to read the exported file. You can also choose how to handle errors, which may occur for certain symbols on your form, like currency symbols. After this, we would import the file to Excel, translate the labels in this highlighted column, save, and then import it back to OnBase. To test the form, we would need to change the location of our personal computer. OnBase reads the primary language based off location. This can be changed in your Windows or browser settings. Using Unity Forms as a vehicle to an internal or external workflow is an invaluable tool in your business. This in itself, though, could be its own webinar with the amount of options and capabilities that are available to us when designing our workflows in OnBase Studio. We're going to save that for another time, but for now we'd like to give you a very high-level overview. Unity Forms are broken down into two categories: document forms and workflow forms. Document forms are stored in OnBase as documents once submitted. Workflow forms are temporary forms used to carry data. It is not a retrievable option in OnBase. It's more of an interface used to capture data and store it in other data points like keywords or workview type objects. The display HTML form Unity Form action was added to OnBase 18 as a new way to use Unity Forms and carry data via a workflow. You can select a document type to select the keywords we would want for data. You can then continue with your Forms designer as normal. Otherwise, you can configure the rest of your Forms actions in Studio during your workflow configuration.
So we've seen how some of the more advanced features can really make your Unity Forms extremely powerful. Hopefully we've introduced some new concepts to inspire you to take your Unity Forms to a new level. And now that we've gone over some of these, how interested would you guys say that you are in leveraging these in your current environment? Well, it looks like these are definitely super useful for a lot of you. You've got a lot of very likelies, somewhat, and 3% of you don't want to use these at all. That's fine. Let's see here. Let's go over some questions anybody had here.
Where are the custom actions saved? Or how do I see what custom actions have been created on a form? So when we go over to the designer ribbon, when we're in our form administration, there's an option called custom actions. And when you select that option, it will show you all of the custom actions that have been saved for that form and what actions are available. Can I force text box entries to be capital letters? You could do that with a custom action. Yes. If I set a condition based on a field name and later change the name to something more descriptive, does the condition auto-update to the new name? It would not. You would need to go in and change that after you update the description.
And if you'd like any more information about Unity forms, please feel free to reach out to support@navient.com if you'd like any more information or documentation. And please feel free to request a copy of this presentation or any other previous content that we've put out by navigating to navient.com within the resource library. We encourage you to join us for our next webinar, April 17th, where we will discuss Navient's Brainware solution, which provides time-tested data capture automation leveraging artificial intelligence. Of course, we hope you join us at our annual summit to learn how every department in your organization can work better, smarter, and faster with OnBase. From the newest users to seasoned executives, this event is truly for everyone. If you're on the fence about attending, simply have a conversation with someone who has been there before, and I'm confident you'll be eager to attend this year. And thanks again for coming. This has been a presentation of the Navient Customer Care Group.